Hello, everybody. Welcome to the CG Cookie live stream. This is Tuesday, so it's Blender, all about Blender Tuesdays. And today we're talking about a Blender film review. And right out of the gate, I'm going to answer Mal Holmesy, who had the question for what reason are we reviewing the movie. And I think that's fair. You know, maybe a lot of people come to CG Cookie expecting strict education tutorials and whatnot, but the reason to do for the films and live streams in general is that we can cover topics that are educational, but not in the tutorial sense. Like we can explain concepts and touch on things that don't fit well in a tutorial. And that's a big benefit of the live streams. But with the film reviews in particular, we can look at a Blender artwork, which is, you know, this is a Blender open movie, the first one. And so we can look back in time, see how far Blender's come, analyze the artistry behind the filmmaking, the technical pros and cons of the film, and get that kind of an education, like a historical education. And for me, that was a big deal when I was going through school. Like I listened to visual effects podcasts and filmmaking podcasts to like nurture the passion, because that's kind of why I got into computer graphics in the first place, making films or making movies, making animations. And so if it was just learning the tools, like that would have been a little boring to me, but nurturing the passion of films, understanding films conceptually, really helped my education as a digital artist. And so that's kind of why we're doing the Blender films. This is only the second one we've done. And I guess if you absolutely hate it, everybody hates it, then we won't do it much anymore. But that's kind of the idea behind what we're doing today. But let me not waste any more time and introduce our guest. Well, we have Lampel, who's my co-Blender instructor at CG Cookie. And we also have Tim Von Rueden, which is pretty special to us because he single-handedly built the concept side of CG Cookie, and recently left to be an independent artist. And so he's doing great at that. We're happy for him, sad to see him go, but thrilled that we still have an awesome relationship where he comes and joins us in this stream. And he loves movies, and that's why particularly we've had plenty of film conversations throughout our friendship and co-workership. But that's kind of why he's here today. And so Tim, I wanted to give him a chance, since a lot of people here probably know Tim from CG Cookie. Like, how you doing? You know, it's been a few months since leaving. Like what are you up to? Just curious.
Yeah. Well, I mean, thanks for having me back. Like you said, I like talking about movies, so today will be a blast. So yeah, like Ken said, I went independent in November, and I kind of took a month or two off. I went to Europe, and I tried to figure out what do I want to do as an independent artist. And I have been kind of figuring it out. And I think conventions have been my number one support system. I had a weird conversation with an Uber driver at a convention, and he was talking about how you need 5 pillars of support so that if one crumbles, your foundation still stands. And that meant a lot to me. And he was like a financial advisor to big name people. He was a retired billionaire, and he just got bored. So he's just Uber driving now. And he was just like sharing all his business advice. And I felt like it was the perfect timing for me being independent and trying to figure out, okay, where will I make my money? Where do I get revenue from? And actually having to kind of narrow it down and pinpoint where your money's coming from and actually like know your numbers. Right. It was really good for me to see how much do I need to make a month. And as a struggling artist, I think a lot of people have that starving artist perception in mind, but I guess I'm here to tell you I live with a house full of independent artists, so you can do it. And I think that's what CG Cookie was meant to teach. And that's part of what I taught with the concept art side is how to be an independent artist in the modern art industry. So I think CG Cookie was more of an example, and I try to serve as an example of that. Yeah. So yeah, it's been really good.
Dude, all the best stories start with, I had a weird conversation with an Uber driver.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, nowadays, right?
Right. So I keep up with 10. We talk about once a month, and like it's been fascinating to hear how he is surviving as an independent artist, and you know, using Instagram and just the conventions is mind blowing to me. I don't know of any 3D artists. Do you see many 3D artists like doing conventions?
No.
Okay.
Only if they do 3D printing. I do see a lot of 3D printed sculptures.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
That could be cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Huh.
Kent, we should get on that.
We should look into that. Maybe explore that. That'd be kind of fun.
Hey, you guys should. Yeah.
Awesome, dude. Well, really, it's an honor to have you. I count you as a friend, and I love our past film discussions. And this is a particularly weird film, I would say, which you're perfect for. You like the weird stuff. So cool.
I do love the weird films. Yes.
Right. Awesome. Well, we'll get started then talking about the film. How I wanted to kind of introduce it is give you some background on the film because it is the first one and it's pretty old. We've done one other film review before, and it was the latest open movie from the Blender Foundation, Blender Animation Studio, I think it's called now. But this was the first one, and I wasn't around. Well, I mean, I was alive, but I wasn't in the scene when it came out. Were you guys at all? I imagine not.
No, not yet. I think I came on around the Big Buck Bunny time.
Okay.
So this was already a little bit old by the time I started.
Right. And Tim, Blender probably wasn't on your radar much.
Well, you know what's funny is while I was in school, we were shown Sintel as like a demo.
Right.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. So Sintel was more me. I think I remember Buck Bunny, but Sintel, I happened to be working at the studio that Colin Levy worked at before I got there, and so the whole studio was watching his new film, which was Sintel, and that's what kind of pushed me over the edge. So I was surprised, Lampel, given how young whippersnapper you are, like you came on earlier than that. So
I was at least aware of it.
Sure.
I wasn't like involved or whatever.
Yeah, right.
I couldn't do anything, but
at
I
least
knew what it was. I saw it.
Of it. Right. So I was not aware at all of Elephant's Dream, and so I wasn't there to experience what I've read in that it was a big deal. It caused waves in the industry. And so for that reason, I kind of wanted to go back and look at it. Also, I was telling them earlier, I'm a bit of history was my favorite subject in school. And so I kind of get a kick out of looking at the past and see how far stuff has come. And so Elephant's Dream was the first open movie, the first of its kind. And it made history in that sense. It was released in 2006. It was an eight-month production, and only a team of 6 people. Which, if you've seen the film and watched the credits, you can see how ridiculously small the team is. And it was done with pre 2.5 Blender, which I want to Google a screenshot of it because it blows my mind that what was able to be done back then. But when it came out, from what I've read, is like all of a sudden Blender and the Blender Foundation were in the same conversations as like a Pixar. They were being compared. Now, if we're honest, Pixar's going to win out against this, film, perhaps. But at least we were in the conversation, and that had not really been happening before. So it was a big deal in history in the perspective of Blender. Also, it kicked off the unique development approach, which involved the developers, the Blender Foundation, actually creating, going through the production pipeline for the purpose of developing the software. Like if you take Autodesk, for example, I've never heard of an Autodesk movie. They work closely with movie productions to inform their development, but this was, and to my knowledge, the Blender Foundation is the only like software development place that also produces content. And so like that's really unique. It's really powerful, and we've seen several open movies since then. But so I just wanted to give a background on Elephant's Dream. If anyone didn't know it was the first one, they might look at it and be like, the animation's a little weird, but we'll get to that. So
how many people did you say were working on it?
So there were 6. It was codenamed Orange when it was being developed, and the Orange Open Movie team was only 6 people total.
Okay,
and they had
that's so like even the fact that 6 people could make an animated film, back then is already
right.
That's probably part of the conversation was like 6 people can make an entire film,
right,
or entire short film.
For the first time with this software that had never been tested like this. It really is a big deal looking back in that context. But I mean, I think in the credits they had people contribute like textures. I think there were some photographic textures that there was a list of people who were like additional texture or additional animation. So I think there was a little bit of community involvement, but the core team was only 6 people. Pretty amazing stuff. But with that said, kind of hopefully painting a picture of the background, I figured we'd go ahead and watch it. It's about 10 minutes. So it's fresh in our mind. And then you guys watching can sit back and enjoy. Maybe make any notes that you want to contribute to the conversation. Remember, this is a live stream. You are part of this. So ask any questions, cast any knowledge. If any of you were around the Blender scene during Elephant's Dream and the release, I'd love to hear like your perspective on it, and what that was kind of like for you guys, at least as much as a comment in a chat can say. So with that said, let's go ahead and get some popcorn and watch the film.
At the left we can see at the right we can see the hat snarlers. Everything is safe, perfectly safe. Emo? Watch out! Are you hurt? I don't think so. You? I'm okay. Get up. Emo, it's not safe here. Let's go. What's next? You'll see. You'll see. Emo. This way. Follow me! You're not paying attention.
I just want to answer the phone.
Emo, look, listen. You have to learn to listen. This is not some game. We could easily die out here. Listen. Listen to the sounds of the machine. Listen to your breathing.
Well, don't you ever get tired of this?
Tired?
Yeah?
Emo, the machine is like clockwork. One move out of place and you're ground to a pulp.
But isn't it like
Pulp, Emo! Is that what you want, Pulp? Emo, your goal in life. Pulp! Close your eyes.
Why?
Now!
Okay.
Good. What do you see at your left side, Emo? Well?
Nothing.
Really?
No, nothing at all.
Really? And at your right, what do you see at your right side, Emo?
The same, Brooke. Exactly the same. Nothing.
Great.
Listen, Brooke. Do you hear that? Can we go here?
There?
Yeah.
It isn't safe, Emo.
Well, but...
Trust me, it's not.
Well, maybe I could go...
No.
But...
No!
But...
No! Any further questions, Emo?
No.
Emo.
Yeah?
Emo, why? Emo, why? Why can't you see the beauty of this place? The way it works. How perfect it is.
No, Brooke. I don't see. I don't see because there's nothing there. And why should I trust my life to something that isn't there? Well, can you tell me that?
Emo.
Answer me. Brooke, you're a sick man. Stay away from me.
No, Emo, it's a trap.
It's a trap. At the left side, you can see the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. How's that for a trap?
No, Emo.
Oh, at the right side, you can see. Well, guess what? The Colossus of Rhodos.
No!
The Colossus of Rhodos, and it is here just for you, Brooke. Just for you.
It is there! I'm telling you, Emo, it is. It is.
So that is Elephant's Dream. To start off, did you guys maybe initial impressions? Like what are your initial impressions about the film?
Well, I was gonna say my favorite soundtrack bit was the credit part, but people can listen to that on their own.
Oh man, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I don't want to make people watch their credits.
I'll just turn it down so it's like still there while you're talking.
I thought the soundtrack fit really well. I thought they edited that pretty well. The thing that I wrote down though was uncomfortable.
Okay.
That was my initial impression, was uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I don't think all for the right reasons, but I know we'll talk more on the technical stuff afterwards.
Right.
I mean, hearing the way you talked about the achievements that it achieved and what it meant in 2006 for an open source software to be able to do this, I respect it a lot. And I think it becomes harder to critique something that you know had such an impact, and it wasn't meant maybe to be like artistically merit on a technical side, but more or less impressive for what it meant at that time. So I don't want to critique it yet, but I will say in terms of what they did do right, I thought they really showed an impressive amount of modeling and animation with only 6 people.
Yeah, man, I really like how you put that. That's going to fit in really well, I think, with the type of what the film's about and what the director kind of implied that it's about.
I think the word uncomfortable works pretty well because, like, in a way, they kind of lean into it with a lot of their elements. Like, I was not expecting the little creatures inside the phone to like pop out, and that was like, oh man. So they took the things that they're like, okay, it almost seems like they knew it was kind of awkward, and then just like, let's just go all out.
Yeah.
And like even the character design and whatever, they're like, yeah, let's just go for it.
There's definitely a commitment to the style that I feel like there might have been some pressure to go a little different directions at times. There's a particular scene, but anyway, we'll talk about that a little bit later. I agree with you completely. They really committed to a particular flavor, and I respect that. I like it. But uncomfortable is very much a good word for that. But I don't think I can add anything to my first impressions other than I was super confused. I like to think I'm decent at interpreting a film, and this one, there are some that are like widely respected that I'm just like, I did not get it. I've tried so hard, and this was one that, no matter how many times I watched it, I could not connect enough dots to have like a cohesive. I could make like sense out of a scene, but not in the context of the whole. So in that way, like, it was very abstract in my opinion. That was my first impression.
Definitely abstract. It seems like it's really philosophical, but I can't like quite put my finger on what exactly it's trying to go for, you know?
Right. And those types of movies often frustrate me because it's like you're like scratching at this epic masterpiece, but then without like really knowing, it could be complete crap. You know, like there's what's the difference? But
that's how I kind of felt too. And I was worried. I felt the same way with you, Kent, where I was trying to string it together and put together the pieces of what puzzle they were building for us. But oftentimes I felt like they were bringing and introducing imagery that was meant to evoke emotion, but I felt like there wasn't any substance to it. It didn't hold any weight behind it.
Good.
Right.
Good
okay.
point.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. I'm glad that we were on the same page with the first impressions. I could, being how into film you are, Tim. I was wondering if you would be like, oh yeah, it's about this, and this. Like it's clear as day.
I did make notes about that, and I really tried not to read the YouTube comments because that's where I watched it, and I know that there's interpretations flying, you know, because everyone has their own.
Right.
But I will say I had to watch it twice to really kind of form my own, and I think it's because of how little we're given, and especially from the characters' perspective. I felt like at first I wanted to relate with the characters, and the first viewing, it's very hard to relate to these two kind of static, awkward characters. So then the second time I related more to the environment that they were thrust into. And I think that's where I was able to kind of determine what I thought the short was trying to say.
That is
really
because
cool. you're not given any context.
Yeah, totally. So a couple comments from the chat. Matt says it still looks good for being made 12 years ago. I'm glad you think that was important for me to know the context of like when the film was made in order to like have that respect that Tim was talking about, because it could be easily like dismissed if we think that was made, you know, yesterday. But yeah, so other comments like it feels more like a nightmare than a dream. Still pretty weird. I feel bad for the young man. So yeah, it looks like we're kind of all in the same kind of place. Awesome. So you bring up something, Tim. You didn't want to read the YouTube comments. So I watched it probably 3 or 4 times before I was like, okay, I got to see what other people are saying about this. And I read some comments, but I also found on the Wikipedia page that the director offers a fairly comprehensive like description of what the story is, while also leaving like the openness for like, we want you to bring your own interpretations into it. But he did offer one. So I have that in the presentation, like to read. Would you prefer to do that before or after we talk about it? After.
I want to hear both of your interpretations first.
Okay.
I did give in and read the YouTube comments, and I think my favorite interpretation was the one who said the first time he heard him say emo, he liked to think of it as email, and this is just like the journey of an email going through your computer.
That's
and then, like once I watched it again, I was like, now I can't unhear email.
Agreed. I saw that comment too, and I thought it was email for the longest time.
Oh, that's
email.
Right. I mean, you can see a lot of that, especially in the beginnings with like the connecting wires, like going different places. The wire, you like have the communication, electricity bolts going through the wires. Like it made a lot of sense at the beginning, in my opinion.
Yeah, I knew that one was ridiculous, but it was worth bringing up.
Right. By the way, chat, if you guys have any, like throw it in there, please. I'd love, you guys are already doing that, but please, continue to do that. So we talked about the background. Next, so yeah, the way that we did this, the first movie review, and I wanted to do it again, was to kind of talk about the film in 3 different categories. First, you have your story, which is narrative, plot, character development, the interpretation of meaning. And then we're going to talk about the artistry, which all of these things have already been mentioned in y'all's first impression. So it should make a lot of sense to go this direction. Artistry, like the identity of the film. And then finally, we're going to have technical execution, which is where we can nerd out from the Blender side of things, the animation side, and critique it from that side. So with the story, I'm going to wait, like you said, Tim, for the director's opinion. And Jonathan Lampel, you might be a little less biased because I have a hard time remembering what I thought before I read stuff.
Oh, really?
So
okay.
Maybe you go first if you're up for that.
I really had to think about it because the first time I watched it through, I just had more questions. It's like, who are these characters? How did they get into the environment? Why is it that emo, like, how did he even get there to be, he's like the new person, it seems like, but he must have gone through some process to get there. So why is he so unaware? And so it's got to be just in one of their heads or in somebody else's head, or it's very much dreamlike in the way where they just appear without context and just kind of assume things are happening. So, yeah, you kind of do have to read things into the environment and then take the actions not literally almost. I'm really not sure.
Right.
I really want to hear what Tim said because I just had more and more questions as I watched it.
Right. Yeah. To your point, though, I agree. Like when they threw you in there, one of my first assumptions was these two know each other really well. Is it like a grandfather, Prug, to Emo, or there's some relationship where clearly Emo has trusted this person enough to like be around him and enter his head even. So yeah.
Right. But at the same time, they have like really awkward exchanges, like they don't know each other.
Good point.
But sometimes they do.
Right.
So I think that's part of like the dream where it's just like things are really shifting around.
Right. Real quick, there's a comment about the name of the film doesn't make any sense either. I think this was on the Wikipedia page, but it's in reference. Initially, it was called Machina, but then they changed the name of the film to Elephant's Dream. And that's a reference to, I believe, a Dutch tradition of when you're putting your kids to bed and you're going through story time, there's like an abrupt ending where it's an elephant snoring. I think that I need to look it up, but it has something to do with a Dutch tradition of putting your kids to sleep and like stopping the bedtime reading and like letting them go to sleep and start dreaming. So that's the reference.
Interesting.
Yeah, and there's also a point where Prug's cane, the top of it is an elephant head. I don't know if any of you guys noticed that, but kind of a fun little thing.
Oh.
Yeah, but anyway, I'm not sure of that tradition, so it doesn't quite resonate with me. But
The only thing I'm seeing right now is dreaming about elephants may be an indication that you need to remember something or reminding you not to forget something important.
let me look at it real quick. Because I thought it was there that I saw it. Oh yeah,
I was
okay.
curious about the title of the movie too.
Right.
And admittedly, I kept looking at it being like, is there supposed to be an apostrophe there?
True, it's
I
not
kept thinking
possessive.
that for a while.
Very true. So the last sentence of the first Wikipedia paragraph is, it's referring to a Dutch tradition used by parents to abruptly end children's bedtime stories with the introduction of a sneezing elephant, not a snoring elephant.
Oh.
Interesting tradition.
Huh.
Yeah, so interesting. But okay, Tim, do you want to give your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm still trying to make the connection between why they would choose that then for this short.
Yeah, that didn't really clear it up.
So
Yeah, that really clarified. Like I said, the first time I watched it, I could not relate to either of the characters, and admittedly, the first animation of him turning around and getting up, I thought felt so chunky, and it kind of broke my suspension of disbelief like immediately. So it was hard for me to get absorbed in the story. I think that's why I had to rewatch it just to really try to hear what they're trying to say and what they're trying to do. But after my second time, I felt pretty confident that my interpretation was a man conforming to a machine and trying to pass on that experience to another generation, a younger generation, and the younger generation not wanting to conform to it, and the man literally beating it into him that this is the way it's meant to be. But I could also see trickles of faith. I think it could easily be, this is the faith that I grew up with, this is the way it is, and if you follow it, you'll be fine. And the younger generation questioning it and having the older one be upset with it. And then the last one was change, the fear of change.
yeah, dude, I knew you were the
That
right
was
person to call.
Really good.
I knew it. I'm really glad you brought all that up. So I'm also even glad you brought up the faith part of it, because if I'm a little bit transparent, like even Mikal in the pre-stream chat, we got to talking about how I grew up in the Bible Belt, and you're asking about religion in this area and stuff. So like that's been a big part of my life, and in particular the last few years look a lot like emo in my opinion. You know, kind of reassessing the traditions that have been told, and so the faith aspect to this film, I could not help but like go there pretty quickly. And yeah, to your point, it absolutely affirmed that interpretation of you know, the stubbornness of someone who, and he happens to be old in the film, so maybe someone who's been around the same beliefs for a long time, and how stubbornness can lead to like control and oppression, and then the innocence of emo, just like, can I check out what's in that door? Like, what's so wrong with that? It sounds like good music, you know? So yeah, I completely went the faith, the religiousness. And he also says a line, emo does, where he says, why should I trust my life to something that isn't there? Like, that's so existential that it's hard to avoid, you know, like the religion side of that question.
That line definitely stuck out, but it's hard to you can't make like a direct comparison, because I couldn't figure out, is Prug controlling what emo sees, or is it just happening to them and he's able to kind of adapt to it and like filter it in a way? Because like,
yeah, that's a good
because then
question.
the whole door, he's like deliberately tricking him if he's controlling it with his cane.
Right.
But if it's not him and he's just able to like change it, then it changes the meaning. That's weird.
So I think it's a little bit of a mixture, but I would lean more towards the filter part of it, because remember, emo towards the end, when he starts to rebel, he starts to change the environment. So to me, that's kind of like taking control of himself. Like, we all have the power to interpret the world through our own eyes and, like, you know, conform what we see to what, you know, how we reason things to be. So I think at the beginning, the majority of it was Prug filtering, but That's a really good way to define it. Filter versus controlling.
It was almost like he was allowing the older man to control the machine.
Exactly.
Like give you the power to someone else. And then at the end, he was kind of giving it to himself. And the older man did not like that.
Right.
I think, okay, so it's like the environment was, from this point of view, like the environment was Prug's perspective on things. Because at the end, he's pointing at like the tentacles and be like the Hanging Gardens of Babylon and whatever. Yeah. And he's obviously seeing something different than what's there.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But he could just be seeing something opposite of what Prug's perspective is.
Right.
And he sees that as dangerous or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. Kind of the conflict of ideas that, unfortunately, not everyone sees like disagreement or seeing things differently as a good thing. It's like that's a call to war, but like, so that's kind of what happened thanks to Prug. But that's a really good question that you bring up, the filter versus the control. It also reminds me of Parenthood a little bit. And like I sense the very real responsibility of like raising particularly young kids and how they can't really make sense of their environment so early on, right? Like just simple example of don't touch the burner on the stove, like you want to control the environment enough to like keep them alive or not injured, but at the same time it's like I'm thinking in the future, where's the line, the threshold of where I need to let them start having their own ideas and not become a danger, like Prug at the end and become stubborn, because like I'm sure I'll feel like they're my work, they're my life's work to have raised them, and to let go and them have their own ideas. I can see where that would cause people to be a little tight-fisted with what they've taught or their perspective. So
yeah, I think the only thing that disappointed me a little bit was I felt like they introduced a lot of things that still had missing ties near the end, and they weren't able to connect all the things that they introduced. I think that's why the interpretations are so vast. And usually I love movies that have a vast majority of different interpretations, but this one felt like it was reaching when there wasn't anything to reach for, and then you come to a conclusion just based on your personal taste or your personal experiences.
Yes. I think also into the technical side, but all aspects of it, I got the impression that there were lofty aspirations for the film that probably like any film production, they had to be like, items on the list marked off in order to make, the budget or actually get the thing done. I did feel like that was a little bit of a burden throughout the entire process. And you see that in technical things like the elephant in the room being the animation, but we will definitely talk about that. Yeah, but to your point, I think that I got the impression that loose ends were caused because of the tight production time frame and things.
Because I think they could have easily cut the film in half and like cut out a lot of scenes or imagery that I don't feel added much to it. And I think would have saved them a lot of development time and struggle, and then could have put more time into the animations or even some of the lip syncing felt. Well, we'll talk about that later.
Yeah. It was pretty long.
You're right.
Yeah, like 10-minute for a short film, and especially a short animation film. Like Pixar rarely is over 4 or 5.
Wow, that's a really good point. And there are some that just could have been cut out easily. Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. Cool. We'll hit
That's
on
hard
those.
with animation because once you spend all that time, you don't want to be like, oh, let's just throw it away. But in this case, it probably would have benefited from it.
I think you're absolutely right. We've got some pretty good comments in the chat. Let's see. As we get to the end, Yves Pereira, as we get to the end, it looks like the actions around them are less controlled by them. Okay, yeah, that's maybe what you said that while we were talking about it. To me, it felt like the old man is hiding things from him. Prug is hiding things from Emo.
Yep.
There's several lines, that absolutely implies that, where he switches what he says. He said at one point he's like, we could be killed at any minute. It's not killed. He says something like where he first says him and then he includes himself. So he does seem to be hiding some things. I have the feeling that the dialogue was not terribly important. It might have felt like an afterthought to me.
But there was definitely like a few lines that were really intentional that stuck out, and then some filler.
Yeah.
Because there was a couple good lines.
Mm-hmm. And yes, Mal Holmesy also said there's a lot of unneeded scenes. Yeah, agreed. Seems like we're kind of in the same boat. Cool. Do you want to talk about? Do you want to read what the director said?
Yes,
okay.
I want to hear what the
before you do that. I have a question. There's the point where he's like walking across the ledge and he's getting towards a door, and he's talking about like he says a word that I couldn't understand. So it's like the point of your life is, or whatever, like your goal in life is. And then he says
pulp.
something about like pulp,
Pulp, like orange pulp, like ground to a pulp.
orange pulp. Okay, I did not like. I watched that so many times. And I was like, I don't understand what he's saying.
Where was that part? Yes, it's when he walks on the that weird scene that. I mean, weird. It's kind of all weird. Where is that scene at? It's where he walk like the platforms like come up out of the ground. Here it is.
Yeah, because I feel like, oh, this is important to the story, but I just didn't get it.
That was another part where I couldn't help avoid the religious aspect of it, but because that's kind of a home run argument for the religious folk who are like, do you want to go to hell? No, of course not. So listen to me. Like that's kind of a tactic that I've certainly witnessed a lot. And he has this explosion of fire that happens, and I don't know. That's kind of what that scene kind of represented to me.
Was it right here?
Sure.
It's at 4. Let's see. I'll give you the. Also, the reason we're doing this, Tim and Jonathan haven't figured out a way that they can like sync a video with me. So I'm kind of manually trying to sync it, and it's at like 4:30, 4:46 about. I'll play it again for the.
Emo, your goal in life. Pulp.
But yeah, cool. So was that it, Lampel, or
Yeah, that
you were
was
just asking for clarification?
That was
Okay.
all I was wondering about.
Okay. The main character is the environment. That's pretty cool. That's a cool. That kind of goes with what you were saying, Tim. Someone Matt Holmesy in the chat said the main character is the environment impresses me a lot about the film, and I can't wait to talk about that once we get to the technical things.
It's almost like the environment to me had more character than the characters.
Yes, agreed. All right, cool. I'll go ahead and read then what the director said, because it goes very much in
I'm
line.
super curious.
In line with what you guys have been saying. So this is from Bassam Kurdali, the director, and he's very much active in the Blender community. That name should be familiar to you. But he says on Wikipedia, which was sourced from somewhere else, but the story is very simple. I'm not sure you can call it even a complete story. It's about how people create ideas or stories, fictions, social realities, and communicate them or impose them on others. Thus, Prug has created in his head the concept of a special place or a machine that he tries to show to Emo. When Emo doesn't accept his story, Prug becomes desperate and hits him. It's a parable of human relationships, really. You can substitute many ideas, money, religion, social institutions, property, instead of Prug's machine. And the story doesn't say that creating ideas is bad, just hints that it's better to share ideas than force them on others. And there are lots of little clues, hints about this in the movie. Many little things that have meaning, but we're not very tight with it. We are not very tight with it because we're hoping people will have their own ideas about the story and make a new version of the movie. In this way and others, we tie the story of the movie with the open movie idea. I feel like that's exactly what
That
we
was
have been
good.
talking about.
I feel like Tim nailed it on the head.
I absolutely.
I don't know how you did that. Like you got it.
He did it.
Well, what's funny? Because I think I watch so many of these movies, and I watch a lot of reviewers give their interpretations and hear different ones. So I like formulating my own based on previous knowledge of like look outside of what your expectation might be. The way he wrote this was so well written and thought out. I almost wish this translated a little easier into the short.
Yeah.
And like some of the dialogue I think could have easily helped narrate what he's trying to say here, because this is great. I like this paragraph a lot.
Absolutely. Yeah, it does get to that idea of like how the dialogue kind of falls short. This is a rich idea. When I read this, I was like, I needed this to be able to watch it, and it's like, yeah, I see it, I get it, and that's a really cool thing to be saying, and a cool context of the purpose to the film.
Yeah, because otherwise it feels a little bit haphazard.
Yeah.
But this kind of ties it all together. So it would be nice if it came through a little bit more, but at the same time, I do like it when movies aren't heavy-handed.
Yeah, true. True. I think they were trying to strike that balance again in only 8 months. That's such a fast time.
Oh yeah, that's nothing.
Right, and not that they. I don't know. Is it fair to say that they weren't professionals at the time? That seemed bad. I don't know if they were professional filmmakers, all 6 of them, as much as they were probably more well-known people in the community.
Yeah.
They were good artists.
It felt experimental.
Yeah. And for that, like considering these things, I think it's important to like respect it for what it was.
Oh, for sure.
But there's a question from Quite Nameless. Is the community supposed to make spin-offs? I think that the foundation would love if that happened. So if you want to, maybe you should. But I don't know that too many people have the gumption to take those assets and make sense of them, number one, and then create something on their own. But I'm sure that would be part of the idea.
I think, and part of the intention was to make your own.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like you blender and make your own.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Well, kind of like what Tim said, there are kind of a lot of things that could probably be cut.
Mm-hmm.
So I bet we could probably do a little bit of editing and chop it down maybe in half and just see if we can just through editing get that story through a little bit more clearly. That'd be interesting.
That'd be a brilliant challenge to the community.
I'm going to write that down.
Yeah, you should.
I would even have an overarching narrator for the parts that they're not talking to kind of fill in some of the...
Dude, that's brilliant.
Because I totally agree with Jonathan, though. Like, I hate movies that feel like I'm being spoon-fed what this means.
Yes.
Yeah, that's super obnoxious.
Oh, it drives me nuts, let me tell you.
Even if I agree with them, I don't want that.
Yeah. I mean, but that's kind of funny. That's like the Prug side of it, right? That's like a filmmaker Prug. Spoon feeding exactly what you should be taking out of it.
It's like any crime mystery thriller, and like the camera passes by, and if there's something important on the desk, it like zooms in and like does a focus shot. You're like, I saw it. Like I recognized that it was there.
It's kind of
almost becomes like a insult on the audience intelligence and being like, oh, just in case you were too dumb to see this or understand what this meant, I'm going to do a close up and really pan on it so you understand that this is important.
Like when they do like a flashback and you're like, that was 15 minutes ago. I remember what he said.
Yes, I guess it took them.
Resourcing from your own film also drives me nuts.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's hilarious. I guess it took several decades for filmmakers to start giving some credit to their audience that they're not idiots. But how would they know? Like it was all experimental, I guess.
Or I almost feel like the opposite, where filmmakers have figured out that people like not having to think during movies, and they're like, oh, we'll just sit back, eat your popcorn, we'll give you the entirety without a thought having to cross your mind.
Dude, that's a great point. Okay, so one thing I wanted to ask you guys, what I appreciated about Bassam is I'm sure that he would cast, based on how abstract the film was, he probably would side with more interpretive, like he doesn't like being spoon-fed in a movie, for example. But I appreciated so much that he gave this explanation, this excerpt, because I feel like it's a trend with, like, I don't know if it's modern art, or I see it a lot with musicians who never want to claim like, hey, what does this song mean? They won't give you a meaning. They're like, no, it's supposed to mean whatever you want it to mean. I feel like I see that a lot, and it bothers me. I want there to be a middle ground where you offer, basically what this was, like, take responsibility and offer what motivated you to spend 8 months on this thing, and tell us about it, but also like leave it open enough. How do you feel about that concept of not giving any information from like a filmmaker?
It's interesting because then I know probably a lot of people didn't see Mother last year, but then hearing Aronofsky talk about his film, like he was very direct of what his interpretation and meaning behind things were. And it kind of did skate me in a different direction where me and my friends all had very different interpretations. So in that sense, I almost would rather not hear it. But I agree with you where I think if a director can still be vague enough, like the way that this is written, I think is still vague, where he's not saying this is my interpretation. He's like, this is meant to be about possibly money or religion or ideas. And he kind of gives a few different examples. I like that better. But yeah, just being like, oh no, it's up to you. Yeah, I'm not crazy about that because oftentimes to me that means I'm not sure what it means even, and I don't want to lock myself in a position that I'm not, ready to defend or argue.
Oh, absolutely. That's good.
Right. I think, because I think it's fine in this case because sometimes when they do over-explain their work, it gets a little bit, it hits you kind of weird. But I think this is fine because he's not trying to say you should do this or you should do that or whatever. He's just taking you on a journey of an idea. Because if he was like, this represents, this corporation and, this is how you need to act within that system or whatever, like, then you can sit back and be like, I don't know about that. But since he leaves it open to many possible things and you can apply it in different ways, then it still leaves you enough to think about, and you don't have to be like, okay, that's it, I'm done.
Right.
Like, you still have to sit with it a little bit.
Man, that's really good. Yeah, that's to your point. Even I would say, like, when Prug hits Emo and kills him, most humans would be like, oh, he's the bad guy. Like, clearly, like, we hate this dude. But even in that moment, like, he drops to his knees and has this kind of moment of regret, almost like his own machine was not good enough to, like, convince this guy, and it caused him to do something. So you a little bit, you know, I would say Bassam, like, left it open to even relate to this guy, even relate to how easy it is to oppress, you know, impose your beliefs on other people and it go bad.
Totally. And he even leaves it open to the fact that, like, you could still view this as Prug was being the wise person. Like, it may have actually been dangerous, and he just wasn't aware of that. Like, that may be true.
Wow.
And Ken, even hearing you talk about it, now I'm like seeing another interpretation of presenting your work to someone and having someone not fully understand it. So you try to explain it more. And then when they don't accept it, you get defensive and you literally are like arguing your case.
Dude, yes. Oh my goodness. I'm glad you mentioned that. So I'm right now in a cordial but a discussion with a couple members on our site who you know, were expressing that one of my lessons was too incomprehensive, and so I've been going back and forth with them about it. But I'm trying very hard to police myself from being like, you know, no, you've stepped on my work, and I'm getting defensive now. But yeah, it can absolutely go that direction. That's funny you mentioned that. Man, this is good. Yeah, I'm really glad we're doing this. Awesome. Well, I was expecting this to last an hour, which means we have 8 minutes left. Tim, what's your availability like? Can you go another?
Oh no, I'm good.
You're good. All right. We'll move on to the next part. That was rich. I'm glad we got that. Awesome. So the next part, artistry. I kind of define that as like the film's identity, the visual style, and the appeal of it. And we've talked about some of these things. I think, you know, Lampel, what you were saying earlier about how they committed to the weirdness and the awkwardness and the strange environments and stuff like that. And in that way, I think they nailed, my personal opinion is that they nailed an identity. Considering the other films around the time, like animation films, I looked this up a little earlier, like Cars came out in 2006, Happy Feet, Open Season, a lot of animal movies.
I Googled this too. I wanted to know.
Yeah. Monster House surprised me that it was as old as that, because, you know, that had, I think I want to say that was one of the first animated films to render with Arnold. I could be wrong about that, but I think there was something significant about the render engine. But that one had a particular style that was not, you know, all the other movies that I just mentioned, Ice Age, Over the Hedge, The Wild, all of those like were very kid friendly. Even, you know, Cars, of course, but and in that way, Elephant's Dream definitely stood out as having this kind of creepy, uncomfortable, you know, seems to be the key word, uncomfortable, edgy, gritty. These words are maybe overused, but they did go that direction. And in that way, like, it was awesome, and I liked it. It was awesome in that it was unique, and I think they did something. You know, they committed to it. There was the scene where they talk. They jump from platform to platform. I'm going to play it real quick. You know, where the platforms come up and he's like dancing across them.
Yeah.
I could not make sense out of why that scene was in there and why the all of a sudden, like, kind of happier, kiddier, goofy side came out.
I think that's part of the story. Like, I feel like that rounds out the emotional journey.
Okay, so you feel like it does contribute, and maybe
maybe it doesn't need to be as long as it was, but I feel like it added to it.
Okay, cool. I think I was kind of postured by, like, the abstractness there was a seriousness to it and an edginess that, like, this to me did not fit for some reason, because I don't think any of the rest of it has that kind of attitude. It's all kind of dark and gloomy, and he even ends up killing him. But for me, that kind of stood out as being out of place. But in the Wikipedia, they mention it says in plot the movie short. Let me stop playing real quick. This movie short couples lively fun with passionate characters and an epic storyline. When I read that, I was like, oh, that scene is only in there to be able to have that sentence. Like, there's no lively fun, anywhere else. But
I think, well, read McCall's comment.
Yeah,
He
I was
tries
just about to say
convince the
that.
young man that it's all good and fun. I think that's an important part of it. Yeah.
that's good. Yeah, that's really good. He tries to convince the man that it's all good and fun. Okay.
I also saw it as like the facade of like free will, and it was supposed to be trust. And he was dancing across what seemed like this empty pit of doom, but like things were saving him along the way, when really he knew that things would be saving him along the way. And then that's why I think the other guy was just walking.
Right.
It was interesting, but I think it did show that the old guy was trying to show him like, hey, this is fun. Like, you can enjoy this, and you can trust that it'll get you across things that maybe it'll bridge the gap essentially.
Right. I like a lot your meanings to it.
I'm an artist. That's all we do is
No,
we throw meanings on things.
I definitely do. Yeah. I need to look that over again. To me, it pushed against, it kind of muddied the waters of the artistry. I'm imagining like the Matrix with like a really funny scene, or like Neo dancing, that's kind of what it felt like. It fell out of place to me, but that was just me. And I like a lot what you guys are saying.
You know what, my favorite moment I think of the entire film was when he does the wave and it has that flash of a clock or something in the background.
Yes.
It was like a quick,
that's the same
that was
scene.
my favorite edit of the whole movie.
That's the same scene. Wow. We've talked a lot about this one scene.
But I agree with you where it was jarring at first. And I was trying to figure out, I still don't know if I have a set firm stance on what the key type, why they chose those as, and you saw the robot typing on itself in the scene before.
Right.
I was trying to figure out what that was meant to interlay. And
right. I feel like they do have meaning, but like you said, maybe ran out of the loose ends started appearing. Yeah, that scene right there. That is a cool edit. Yeah, with the lights.
Well, it's like right.
All right. Okay, it starts at 4:33.
I think it's. I know it was a horizontal shot. Oh yeah, right here. There. Favorite edit of the whole film.
Yeah, that is a cool one. And again, it's that environment. Like the environment, I have very little to critique about the environment in technical and even artistic things. It's a really cool environment. The main character.
I think you guys would be able more to talk about the technical aspects of the environment, but I will say, to me, as someone that doesn't do 3D, I felt like it did show its age. It did feel older in a lot of regards. So the environment did feel okay. I think the lighting threw me off a bit. Everything had like this very metallic sheen and glare to it, and almost like a blur around it.
Oh, I'm gonna find.
It was all very glowy.
Very glowy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Here's a good example. Like the glare node in the compositor, which I assume is what that's done with. I agree. That was a little heavy-handed, which maybe it was brand new at the time, and they're like, that was probably, when did Star Trek?
Like right there.
Which part? What number are you looking at? What in the timeline?
The frame that you're on right now.
Oh, okay, you're looking at it. Yeah. Okay. Exactly. A lot of glare. That's really funny.
It's like, all right, we get it. It's a dream.
Right. Yeah, for sure. That did seem they were consistent with it. So maybe they were owning their particular style, and that could, be thrown into that camp. But I don't know that it was terribly appealing. Maybe
I did notice this on older short films though too. I forgot which one I was watching, but it was another older one, not by them, but there was also just like a lot of glow.
Yeah.
So it could have just been a thing.
Peter.
Yeah, it could have been like the thing to try out at the time. Kind of like how, what's that, aberramic chromation?
Oh, exactly. That's what I was going to say. When did Star Trek come out? Because that kind of killed Star Trek Abrams.
Oh, that's a good point. Peter says Oblivion came out in 2000. To it. And I remember Oblivion had a lot of that.
Oblivion
and everything was like really like waxy and shining.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Wow, that's okay. I'm seeing Oblivion as 2013.
Oblivion?
Yeah, with Tom
not
Cruise.
Not the movie, the game.
Oh, whoops.
The Elder Scrolls.
Oh, gotcha. There it is.
Oh,
Sorry.
to be honest, I thought of the film right away.
Okay.
Too. I'm like, he's talking about something else. And then I was like, oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, man, that's a very good point. It looks a lot like that. Huh. Okay. Yeah, that's really good. So maybe go ahead.
Or you go.
No, you go.
I was going to say just something on the characters really quick. Immediately, Prague I was more okay with. Emo, I hate his design and his look. But I realized that a long time ago, I realized if you have a love or a hate for something, that there's a passion and there's a reason why for it. And I think because it struck me as so unique and bizarre looking, especially his neck and where it like pinched in and then went out. But it's memorable. It's a character design that I'll never forget. And someone told me, a character artist told me that that's a good character design then. If it's something that's memorable, whether it's good or bad.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's a good point.
But that still doesn't mean I hate looking at it.
Yeah. That's probably a good segue into, I feel like, the biggest critique, which I would say now, I don't know what these models look like in T-pose or in neutral pose, but to me, the animation, which also maybe includes the rigging, is almost painful. It's aged so badly.
Can you show the opening shot with him getting up?
Oh yeah, and I actually read something specifically about that shot. I forgot where it was,
really?
but I want to say that was they did the whole short in sequential order. Like they animated the first scene and then went to the second one, which I think is very uncommon. Usually you kind of bounce around, and I don't know what dictates. I know the film that I worked on, like we did it that way. We like worked in the middle of the film and then went to the beginning and then went to the end. I don't know if it's an effort to stay consistent, visually consistent. But in this case, I think that was the very first scene. And so, naturally the first things you do aren't going to be the most polished. So yeah, I'm going to play that real quick. I'm not getting full frame rate for some reason.
Are you hurt?
Anyway, yeah, to your point, like it's particularly awkward when in their movement, like that entire scene, right?
Yeah, it's
watching
really
it now.
long, and like the reaction is super delayed.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So I don't really know. I didn't use Blender at the time. So I don't know if anyone in the chat did use Blender at the time, but was it a technical thing? Was it like the tools were just underdeveloped? And so maybe Elephant's Dream was a push to like improve the animation tools. But to me, the rigging and the animation, like, I don't mean to be overly harsh, but it feels like someone who did it for the first time.
I don't know about first time, but there is some timing things that are very separate from the technical tools.
Okay.
It got better the
True.
more the film went on, but the opening shot, I agree with, I wrote that down too, Kent, was it felt like my first 3D animation class, and all of us were like trying to just do a simple motion, and it felt very clunky.
Yeah.
But what's weird is in the background environment, things are moving really smoothly, and like the environment always felt more actually very smooth.
Right.
But for some reason, the characters they always felt chunky and clunky to me.
Yeah. So at this point, we're kind of moving on into, we segued into just real quick, the technical execution. So this is where we're nerding out about Blender and lighting and animation quality, if you guys haven't picked up on that. But yeah, I stopped on this one frame that zooms out in the first scene, and you see the platform that they're standing on, and there's like all these icicles and really cool details happening. And like the icicles stood out to me immediately. Like, I don't know how I would do that with Blender render, like today. I don't know how I would create that. That's really impressive. And it looks good today. It looks like a cycles render. So in that way, like, and that's again, the environment particularly, I just think they nailed, and they got this awesome, abstract, bizarre, a lot of procedural animation. I assume that's how they did the chords in the background, and really interesting stuff in the environment. So
what do you guys make of the icicles being there though? That was one thing where I wrote that one down too. That felt out of place. And that started my whole idea of that this felt more like a tech demo of like showing what it could do. And hearing of what this film was made for at the time, that inclusion now doesn't feel bizarre to me. It feels like, look at all this of what we can do, and like, look at what we can do here. Look, we can do here.
Yeah.
And I think that was one part, though. To me, that served no purpose of why there were icicles on this platform.
I do agree. I agree with you. I don't know if I so easily like just bought into the idea that this is a dream. None of this, this is going to make less sense than it makes more sense. So I was just kind of, maybe like, ooh, something sparkly, like, look at these icicles. But yeah, I can't figure out why, other than like it's just cold in that space.
I think then because I agree with you. I think sometimes with dreamlike elements, you can get away with it. But then I would have made the entire outside area look cold.
Yeah,
because the icicles were only on that platform.
True.
They weren't any of the hanging anywhere.
That's so true. Yeah,
you're right.
Tim, do you ever follow Beeple? Do you see his work much?
I don't think so.
If you listen to Imagine Dragons, his work is being picked up for some of their album covers. But he's a 3D artist. We're gonna do a special study on him in a live stream in a couple months. But
how do you spell it?
Beeple. But he's an example to me of like someone who can just throw stuff in a scene, and maybe there's a lot of meaning behind it for him. But given that he creates a new 3D render every day and has for 10 years.
Oh, yes. I was like, I know his name sounds familiar.
Okay.
You told me about this guy.
Oh, okay, cool. To me, like that's maybe what was happening here is it was purely for a cool visual, and you're just throwing stuff in there to make it look cool. That's kind of where I land at it. But I don't know, maybe if Bassam ever sees this, he's rolling thinking like, no, there's a very good meaning to it. But yeah.
I would just have it be consistent then. Like if you would have had icicles everywhere or had it feel
totally
cold.
True. That's a good critique. No, that's really good.
But hearing you guys talk about how technically challenging that would have been in 2006 with Blender, like now I'm like, okay, they threw that in there because they knew that this would be impressive.
Mm-hmm. So I wanted to affirm like the tech demo feel. I do think that's part of it. I think they were, they would have to like try and showcase Blender, like flex a little bit, and that only makes sense for them to want to do that.
Every environment felt like a flex to me, but in a good way. Like that actually was probably, I think, one of the best parts about this short.
That's a really good way to describe it. I completely agree with that. So Pierrico mentioned in the chat you can do some awesome animation with a basic rig, and that's true. I've seen Wayne Dixon do some amazing animation with a very simple rig. So maybe then it was just the animation. Clearly they have like modeling, shading, lighting, compositing artists, but maybe none of. I don't know. It feels like an accusation. I don't want to say that, but
well, if there's only 6 people. Mm-hmm. The chance that all of them are working on animation is very low. Yeah. There's got to be compositing, modeling, whatever. Mm-hmm. So if you have, how long is this film?
11 minutes, 10:53.
11, yeah. So cutting out some of the intro and credits, whatever, 10 minutes for one or 2 people, I would bet.
Yes, that's crazy.
In 8 months. So like seeing that, it's like, okay, definitely give them a little bit of leeway, but yeah, it is kind of painful, and it doesn't really have anything to do with the technical tools. It is just kind of just regular.
And I feel bad for the animator problems. I feel like that's like our biggest problem with the film. And I'm sure that person is like, oh, I know I can do better now. And
well, yeah, I mean, for sure.
But to your point, I don't think any like Lampel saying, I don't think any of them was a dedicated animator. I think they were all wearing multiple hats, and so. That makes it less finger pointy at a person, less more so at just the thing. But
like Peter points out that Toy Story came out in 1997, and while some of it is a little bit awkward, the animation itself is quite good.
That's true, but you do see some things like some. What is it, like pole targets whenever they snap, like in IK chains, like that's a pretty.
Oh yeah, sure.
It's been mostly solved with modern rigging stuff, but like you saw that in Toy Story, like technical little things, and that you definitely see in this short. That's very true. There's one thing.
I just want to know who animated the environment, because even like the hand coming up or like the little keys coming up under their feet,
yes,
that was felt super smooth. So I think maybe just a juxtaposition of the characters feeling so wonky, but then the environment moving so smoothly.
Yeah.
I think maybe they should have put more focus, less on the environment and more on the characters in that sense, because I think that's everyone's biggest complaint with it.
I'm going to go out on an icicle covered ledge with this one, but I would say that Bassam probably did. at least led the charge, because like I've seen him work, and he is a juggernaut. Like from coding stuff, from shading stuff, from painting textures, like he does it all. Rigging, incredible scripts. I would bet money that he was masterminding all of the craziness going on in the environment, like the wires. I mean, we can go scene by scene and talk about like animating the electricity going down the wires of the second room. Also, there's this part where there's like these spinning turbines and these like vines that are, I don't know, like jittering and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there's just all this really cool atmospheric touches that I mean, just seeing it to scream Bassam to me, like his style. But I don't know, I could be completely wrong about that.
Now that I think about it, yeah, he's the one who is doing like was it the Tube project?
Yeah.
With like the cockroach and the girl. Yeah, now that I recognize and like put those two together, it's very much his style.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is a really cool style.
Yeah, and I think he's probably a big reason why they were able to achieve such technical flexing, I would say, with the environment, or that character that's like typing and stuff. I don't know, that I would just bet that's him. Not maybe not entirely, but like the vision and the execution. He knows Blender in a technical, like script, like code level and artistic level in a way that I don't think many people do. But awesome. Let's see if there anything else technical. I did want to say this stuck out to me from the very beginning in the I think it's the second room with all the wires and the birds on the wires. Like there's something about the platform that they run down that I don't know. It strikes me as it's one of those moments again where I'm like, that I don't know how I would do that now in Blender render. But it just seems so limited when I comparing it to Cycles. But the platforms are like multi-layered. Like it's a box that's clear, that's very grungy on the clear surface, but inside there's like these weird wires looped. I don't know. It's just a very interesting aesthetic, and the path itself is these geometric shapes that kind of interlock and they turn around. I don't know. Very interesting stuff. But I wanted to point that out because the first time I watched the short, I kept going back and watching like, how did they do this back then? That's beautiful. Cool. Let's see. I think that's about all for me, and we're like 15 minutes over. But yeah, if you guys have any closing thoughts, I think
it makes sense now that you say that they did it chronologically, because I did kind of notice it progressively got better quality as it went along. Like the end credits the end like scene where it's like panning over the wires and the like metal tentacles, that looks so good.
Right.
Yeah.
Like just the way everything's placed and the lighting, like it all works perfectly.
Yeah. I'm glad you bring that up. Both the tentacles, which are, I think, certainly procedurally animated, textured, and everything. It looks. I don't
think it's procedurally animated. Like if you look at how it zooms down, like they're very intentionally placed.
Right. I guess I should say, I certainly don't think that they, and for some reason I'm not getting real time playback anymore, but I would say that they didn't animate each one. Maybe they had some like parent strands that they animated or something, and then had like others follow. It just seems crazy to think that they would animate each one, but I don't know. Yeah, maybe they did animate each one. And what I mean, like, you know, that they have this this tiled kind of like square texture on the tentacles, and I figured that would certainly be like a procedural shader quality kind of thing. But also, I'm glad you bring up the credits, because like at a production of this quality, I'm sure that they were running out of gas, and like they still put those animated tentacles coming in from different sides. I wanted to play that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a really interesting touch. I think that was something worth mentioning that easily could go unnoticed. But anyway, yeah, so that was actually a lot of fun. I was afraid when I first started watching this that we're not going to be able to talk much, just ask a bunch of questions. But yeah, that was a lot of fun for me. Cool. Well, I hope you guys got some good entertainment and education, you know, when talking about trying to dissect the artistry and technical side of 3D animated films. But yeah, I think that's going to be all for today. So thank you, Tim. Really appreciate you doing this, taking the time.
Absolutely.
And
anytime you need a movie review guest host, I'm here.
Dude,
yeah, we'll definitely have to do it again.
Yeah, as long as y'all didn't hate it watching, then we would love to do it again and love to have Tim again. Thank you, Lampel. Always appreciate you jumping on with me to do these streams. So thank you guys. And yeah, you have a good rest of your Tuesday, and we'll see you next time.
Yep. Take care, everyone.